I think we can get started. Welcome everyone to the community call. We've got an exciting agenda for today, all centered around events and marketing, essentially. So last week we had ETHCC. We had 3 members of PNF on the ground at ETHCC. We had Dermot, Adrian, and Nelson. So they will do a recap of ETHCC and let us know how that went. Any insights from the ground. Also, if anyone else was at ETHCC, I believe there's a couple people who were. Feel free to bounce off of that and chime in with some of your own thoughts. And then the main sort of bulk of the call will be a workshop that Ads is running on marketing and brand strategy. We're looking to get the community involved in her brand strategy definition process. So that will be a fun session. So yeah, without any further ado, I think I'll pass it on to Ads to kick us off with some thoughts on ETHCC last week.
Hey, thanks, Jack. Nice to see some familiar faces in here. So kind of TLDR for me from ETHCC, it was amazing to actually get out there and start talking to people about the Pocket brand. They didn't always know it, but they were unofficial focus groups for the entire week, which was awesome. My key takeaway.
Now recording.
There we go. My key takeaways were that wherever people had come across the brand or particularly members of the team, actually there was a lot of positivity there. But in general, there wasn't that awareness. I feel like we are maybe starting from some name recognition, but that people don't really know who we are or what we stand for or why they should care. I don't feel like there is particular relationships. So if we think about it from a marketing funnel standpoint, I feel like the main thing we need to be working on as of today is right at the start of that funnel, is trying to drive awareness and consideration, which kind of aligns with what I thought before going in. So that's good, I guess. And it's good to have that clarity. And I didn't pick up any negative sentiment. So I didn't actually, from the developer communities, I didn't hear any negatives around some of the things that I know we feel are negative in the narrative, things like the Tornado Cash incident, things like the token price. I didn't hear any negatives. I feel like we're starting from a fairly clean slate from a brand standpoint. When I talk to them about the history, the heritage, the project itself, like there's a lot of interest. Like we have a lot to draw on as we kind of weave that narrative. You know, we have a right to win. We have very strong heritage. You know, we have a huge amount of learnings that we can draw on. We have the community. We have news coming up that we can build excitement around. But we also have, you know, a lot to do because we are starting from a relatively low baseline in terms of brand awareness. And we have competitors that, in all honesty, are currently outplaying us. And are probably in many ways better resourced, which is why for me this brand strategy session is so important. And I'm glad that you're all here. Let me hand over first though to Dermot and Nelson to maybe share their thoughts from last week.
Great. Thanks, Ads. Yeah, I think it was a really great week, and you certainly got some brilliant insights. And yeah, I guess for me, yeah, similarly at a very high level, I think there was a really high quality crowd in attendance, a lot of great builders, a lot of positivity, but thankfully not kind of naive, over the top positivity. People are really thinking about problems and actually working hard to solve them and aren't blinded to their ideology or just kind of such obvious things that kind of people would have played on maybe 12 months ago and just assumed that things would get fixed. People are being a lot more thoughtful in general, and also there's a great spirit of camaraderie as well. And I think on the kind of the macro level for Pocket and the market, the app chain thesis that Pocket has been talking about for, I think, 4 or 5 years at this stage is really coming through. the likes of Celestia, EigenLayer, all of these different players that are kind of, and of course the whole Cosmos ecosystem, they are all building, coming to light, and application builders are getting quite excited about this new infrastructure coming online, and it all needs ultimate RPC infrastructure. So yeah, I guess similar to ads, speaking directly to people about Pocket, this is obviously the first conference, I guess the first conference we've been to since eDenver, but we've done a lot more as a foundation. I think there's actually more to talk about in terms of where we're going as well, and our new strategy. There's a lot of goodwill. People do want Pocket to win. I think similar to what Ads was saying, there isn't actually a lot of depth in everyone's understanding of Pocket. That brand or narrative understanding is pretty thin. And so yeah, people know the general mission. They don't necessarily know how it would help them. Okay, cool, it's RPC, it's potentially for any chain. So I think there's a lot of great stuff happening. Nobody knows about V1, for example. Nobody really knows actually, unless in some of these deeper DAO circles, about what we're doing with our governance layer. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity really in terms of building that awareness and really working with the community to get there. And I guess maybe the only other point, just speaking directly on our governance, because I was at the Daoist on Sunday, which had, I guess pretty much the vast majority of the leading governance designers and people, I guess, building out different governance infrastructure and everything else. And actually, it was pretty interesting to see. I mean, I was at I guess, a DAO event like this back in, I guess, eDenver in March, but people are now fully realizing that token weighted voting is an abomination. And everyone I spoke to generally believe that Pocket has the right model. And it seems like we are really the only working protocol that has really kind of thought so deeply about not monetizing your governance and just letting your governance be put up for sale, and the kind of issues with plutocracy and inequality and all of those problems that Pocket has thought about from the start. So yes, I think we're in an interesting place with that, and I think it's great that we're leaning into these advantages with the kind of upcoming improvements to our creds to, basically onboard more stakeholders into our franchise. So yeah, so I've spoken for way too long, but feel free to ask any questions as well,
though. Hey guys, Nelson here. I agree with everything Dermot said. So I won't add too much, but I was also at the Modular Summit towards the end, and I would say generally there was a lot of focus on L2s, rollups as a service, a lot of excitement about MEV, a lot of excitement about account abstraction. Definitely felt a lot more infrastructure centric than some of the, I guess, last events I've been to. So I'd say, definitely there was a lot of excitement about infrastructure and a lot of infrastructure developers. Probably less application developers there, to be completely honest, which I think is just sort of a sign of where the market's at. But was certainly interesting, and the modular thesis certainly, there's definitely I would say a lot of momentum behind that, a lot of excitement. So yeah, definitely interesting to think about.
Thanks for the insights, guys. I know there's a couple people here that were also at ETHCC, so if anyone wants to share their thoughts there, I'll pause for a moment in case anyone wants to unmute and add some insights. But if not, we'll then move on to the marketing workshop. Okay. Let's move on to the marketing workshop then.
Okay.
Take it away, Ads.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. I'll probably inevitably share the wrong. I can share the window. There we go. Let's do this. Please bear with me. I am still learning this community. I'm not sure kind of exactly where to pitch this at the moment in terms of how people want to go on a session like this. Now, I do want you to feel free to please jump in, speak up, share your thoughts at any point. But I can't actually currently see you because I can see the screen that I'm presenting. So you might have to nudge me, Jack, if you see anybody raising hands, please interrupt me. Let me know that somebody wants to chat. I thought I would just start by kind of just trying to talk about why I think brand strategy is important. I know it kind of sounds like this really academic thing. We all inevitably love execution. I love execution. I find it hard to focus on trying to figure out the strategy first. But there's this quote that I really like from Abraham Lincoln, which to me sums up why you have a brand strategy. Because for me, the brand strategy is the axe. And especially if I think about where we stand as a project, brand strategy is always super important. If you spend the time to figure it out, you will always reap rewards for doing so. For us, if we're in a world where we need to get this moving quickly, we need to start cutting through to our target audience, we need that razor sharp edge to really cut through and penetrate their awareness. The sharper we can get around our difference and our story and the messaging that we need to land, the more we can bring the brand to life in a way that feels human and real. The more successful we will be, and the more we can achieve with the resources that we have. But also, I don't know if I've bored people on this call with this before, but I am a massive believer in headless brands and this concept that actually community is so much more than what we've been using it for from a marketing standpoint. We've already seen that with some of the involvement from the hubs, with Pocket News from a marketing standpoint. We have the ability to experiment faster, therefore to learn faster, therefore to scale faster. We also have the ability to localize better, to add context more effectively through the community that we have. And for me, if I'm looking at this brand and this project, it is one of our key strengths, and it's one of the things I really want to leverage. But there's also a truth that, a brand is nothing unless people know what you stand for. There's this quote, it's not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. And if every time they meet your brand, you're a slightly different person, you speak in a slightly different way, you communicate a slightly different story, they won't have any idea of who we are. So for me, this is about defining minimum viable consistency that will enable us to cut through maximum efficiency so that we can achieve and deliver our business results as quickly as possible. Now, let me pause there, just in case anybody wants to jump in or disagree. Otherwise, I will plow on. Okay. So in terms of, that's kind of why I think it's important, and that's what we're trying to work towards. It is worth saying that this doesn't stop us from executing, that for us, we don't have the luxury to sit here for 3 months and think about brand strategy. We need to get out and start activating and start just going with our best guess of what some of these things are, and trying to bring the narrative to life and trying to share our story in more effective ways, more consistently. But in the background, we're going to be iterating forwards on strategy. So we're going to keep this as a living, breathing thing that will evolve over time. And it's made up of 3 different parts. So for me, the core architecture of a brand is the substance, which I know a lot of work has already been done on around our why, our purpose, our vision, our mission, our values. And then it comes through to our position. So how do we show up as that in the world? So what do we know about our audience? Who is our audience? Who are the people that we actually need to try to form relationships with? Because, a lot of projects in Web3, in my experience, talk very much from the world of the project. And it's very easy to do that because you kind of know what you want them to hear, and you know what you think is important, and you know what you're doing that you think is really cool, and you kind of just want to share that with the world. But it's kind of like meeting that really boring person at the party that just wants to talk about themselves. You don't really form a relationship with that person. You form relationships with people who communicate with you about where you're at and what you care about. And that's what that kind of audience piece for me is really all about. It's trying to understand who they are, what they care about, where they're at in the journey, so that we can then find ways to engage and interact with them and build a relationship over time. The competitor piece is really to try to do that in as differentiated and as distinctive a way as possible, so that they know what we stand for relative to everyone else, and we give them as many reasons as possible to choose us. And then the final piece is a brand expression, is kind of how we do that. So, you know, it's the same reason that people typically engage in personal Twitter accounts rather than project accounts, because we are wired to like people, and the more human we can make our brand, the more we can give it a personality, a tone of voice, a clear message, a story. So it's about defining the narratives, but it's also defining the how. I mean, it's something that I think is really important in everything that we do. Is it's not going to be just about the activities we choose, because we have to make everything work 10 times harder than that. It's about how do we do those things in as distinctive a way as possible, in a way that comes as much from our values and our essence, our substance as possible, so that it's not just, you know, that we say we are something, it's that they see it in every interaction with us. They see it in what we do and how we show up. So that's kind of the key elements. It kind of, I alternate between thinking it sounds simple and it sounds complex. I think it's simple, but simple inherently is quite complicated, and certainly hard to achieve. But this is what we're working towards. So if we think about how we'll get there, it all starts with understanding. We try to take that understanding and distill it into some clarity around who they are, who we are, why we exist and why we're different, what they do, what we do, and ultimately how we can engage and connect with them. We take that into insights and ideas of how we activate the brand, what kind of channels, what kind of campaigns, and it all should be in a consistent direction. So guided around something that is going to make them choose us, because ultimately that's what's going to deliver the results that we need, and the messages that will form part of that communication, and also how we engage with them and how we show up, and how we appear to be as a kind of as human a way as possible. And this is like, you know, we will be, you know, we are diverse, we have, and we need to leverage that diversity, and it's going to be this interesting balance, I think, of how we tap into that and how we do that in a way that's got just enough consistency that we establish a brand over time. So there has been a lot of work done around brand substance. I think the only thing I want to say on this is that, you know, the work that we've done is great. I really like the DNA. You know, I know that a lot of work from probably many people in this call went into creating it. But I'm a firm believer that all of that work is wasted. We don't carry it through into execution. So if somebody, over time, you want somebody to be able to see all of our activities, all of our external facing things, our product choices, our community structure, the kinds of conversations that we face, and be able to kind of recognize that as elements of DNA. I don't know if somebody's not muted. You could mute, that would be great. Unless you want to talk. Okay. So yeah, so it's really about how do we take this unstoppable open data and open infrastructure that's governed by its users. What does that mean when we carry it through into brand definition? What does it mean for our personality, for our points of difference? How do we activate, like, what by that I mean, like, if we want to do target audience research, how can we do that in a way that is, you know, that is differentiated, or that lives these values? So we are actually about to kick off a survey to try to get more insight into our target audience, but we're going to do it in a way that populates an open repository of insight, because actually Web3 as a sector needs to get better at understanding and talking to the audience rather than, you know, from the project. So we're going to create an Airtable survey. We're going to collaborate with another couple of communities around this, and anybody who completes the survey will have access to the database. So we're going to open source it and try to help be the rising tide and be part of the rising tide. And for me, that's just one little choice, and all the choices that we make are how we bring the brand to life. the bit that I want to focus on, unless anybody has anything they want to say about, I guess, about the brand substance, any feelings about how it has evolved, or whether we're living up to it, whether it's living in our community. I don't know how talkative people are on these calls. I'll give you another heartbeat. Never been good with silence, so I will keep going. Please jump in if you'd like. So that then kind of takes us into brand positioning. So I feel like, from my perspective, and feel free to DM me if you'd rather talk one-on-one, like from my perspective, I think the substance is largely defined. It's now about how we bring it to life. And brand positioning is one of the key areas that I've been focusing on for the last few weeks, trying to understand our audience and trying to understand our competitive landscape and trying to get my head around what I think our strongest angles of differentiation are. This is where we're going to focus on for most of this time. And I'm afraid I'm going to make you get involved, because we have a Mentimeter or a Menti. I want your thoughts. I've got my ideas on who I think our audiences are. We've set a North Star metric around, driving protocol revenue. So if that is, if that's kind of where we're focusing, I would love you just to either click on this link or use the QR code. And
Could you are you able to post that link into the Discord chat? Because if someone's on mobile, they won't be able to scan the QR code.
Sure, there we go. It's now.
I say that as someone on mobile.
Yeah, it's there now.
Perfect. Thank you.
However, just messed up my alignment. Okay. That is not the right one. So I thought we'd start with just a question around, what does success mean for Pocket? So if we talk about marketing as being a tool to get us to success, okay? Any more for any more? I know there are more than 2 responses in this community. Yeah. I love how the words flip. Cool. Adoption, quality, acceptance, innovation, recovery, ubiquity, becoming the default. Those two feel nicely linked. Developing developer community, app developer community, default RPC provider, unstoppable. I'm going to kind of pick on the word unstoppable and just ask, if you wrote that, can you unpack a little for me? What does unstoppable mean in this context of success? Is it linked to that ubiquity point, or the adoption point maybe that's there? I love the idea of having passionate users.
Yeah, I mean, boringly, it's me versus someone else. Yeah, I guess when I think about Unstoppable, I just really do kind of go back to our broader thesis and think about how, I guess, decentralized is a means, right? But it's really just how we have an amazing, diverse, and distributed community across our supply side, in terms of our gateways and the demand side, and really in our community in terms of the types of builders, the types of governance contributors. And I think if we're then have the right culture to enable and sustain that, we're going to be in an amazing place. And I guess that's when I feel we are truly unstoppable. And the protocol itself will remove the single points of failure, such as ourselves at PNF, as well as any other company. So I think that's kind of the big vision where this really important and crucial, I guess, fundamental piece of the kind of the Web3, or even just kind of the open web infrastructure, is owned, governed, and kind of maintained by its users. I guess that's kind of where I'm getting to, I guess.
Cool. I think there's another word for me that I would add if I could type. I really like that default RPC provider thought, by the way. I'm really glad that's got bigger. I also think empowerment is an interesting word for success, and that I feel like if we are successful, it's not just about financial success. It's about empowering ownership within our community. I feel like we have a very positive contribution that we can make to this crazy world of Web3. That to me is part of our success. Cool. I'm going to move on to the next question, unless anybody wants to add anything else there. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I really like all of these. I think quality is a really important word to have on here. I like the market share. I think, yeah, there's an interesting thread that's coming through here. I'm going to move on to the next one. So what audience is going to be most important in terms of contributing to that success? Like, who do we need to engage in order to be successful as a project, either in terms of the words that you entered previously or in terms of that protocol revenue North Star? Who do you want to see me focusing on when it comes to marketing? I should have set out the ground rules for the session. There are no wrong answers at all. There we go. 4 people. Wow. I'm going to be picky. Are we talking any developers? App developers? Nice. Okay. Cool. I presume by paid customers, we mean paying. I guess it probably means the same thing, right? Okay. This is interesting. So on the one hand, we've got developers that are using the product, the demand side, customers, who I think overlap with that group. Nice. Centralized providers is an interesting one, as is RPC providers. If you ever put that, would be willing to share what they mean by that, that would be really cool. Sorry to put you on the spot.
I actually put RPC providers. I think that it'd be, in the ideal world, a successful pocket is that we have this numerous different gateways, numerous different entry points into using the protocol, and places like Alchemy and Fura, all the other different RPC providers could potentially one day enter into that gateway role and use our infrastructure to service their own portals, their own whatever. So I feel like that would be a huge success story as a protocol.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I'm very glad that you raised it. I think especially as the chain, I hate calling it V1, sorry, but as V1 launches, I think that opens up so many different possibilities in that regard. Although that's not to say they're not there today either. Yeah. So I feel like there's a kind of a mix here between, I'm guessing the technophiles are kind of some of the thought leaders within the developer community. It's not a word I'm familiar with, so please let me know if I've just misunderstood that. Otherwise, we've got kind of customers, developers that are customers, maybe app developers. We've got people we could collaborate with, the providers that might be future gateways. And then we've got the stakers, the investors, those kind of degen influencers who kind of drive that retail investment side of things. Cool. Oh.
And the collaboration between all those audiences will make it. If we collaborate each other, like the noise will be very, very, very high.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. I think, actually there's a nice thing in the way that our product, the nodes connect and coordinate. And actually, I think if we can bring some of that into the way that we show up and connecting the different stakeholders, and they will become, it's not a choice that we don't have to just choose one. Ultimately, starting with one is helpful from a focus standpoint, but I think that's a great point. Any more? Unfortunately, next I'm going to ask you to rate them. Now, ignore the strongly disagree and strongly agree. I couldn't get it to let me change the titles. I want you to tell me how important you think these are. And I kind of created my own list. So some of yours are missing, and technical contributors I don't think was explicitly on yours. And it is on mine. But I'd like you to rate on a score of 1 to 5, with 5 being, we're not going to succeed without them being a key focus, to 1 being, we could actually achieve everything we want without them on board. I'd love to just get your sense of how important each of these audiences are to us as a project. Cool. Interesting. Now, this isn't a race to the finish line. I don't want to see all of them heading to 5. This is really helpful. Interesting. So yeah, so I think we've had some debate about this as well. And I think where we came to, or where I'm at, really, I don't want to drag anybody else in with me, where I'm at is pretty similar overall to where you've gotten to, which is nice. I would upweight devs that establish projects for me right now, because I think that, if we can win more of them over, that should be the quickest route to relay growth. I think future gateways is probably an even larger opportunity in terms of relay growth, but particularly if we can become that infrastructure layer that everyone else builds on, I mean, amazing. I think that's a phenomenal vision. But it feels like that will get unlocked more after V1 is out. Builders, hackers, I think, are great and could turn into technical contributors. I mean, devs that establish projects may also turn into technical contributors. If anybody on this call has insight as to that journey, like, I know some of the people on this call have contributed to the project and have run nodes. I'd be curious to, if you have 2 minutes to spare sometime today, if you want to DM me and just tell me your journey. I'm trying to understand whether or not these personas are actually different personas or just the same persona at a different stage of their relationship with the brand. If you want to jump, to unmute yourself now and share your story here, that would be great also. But also my DMs are open. And I think it's right. Like, I think investors will come if we do everything else. I think if we have strong economics and a great brand and a lot of buzz around us, that's going to bring a lot of interest into the project from a broader community, including the investment community. So I think it's there, and I get the importance of it in terms of that economics. But I think it's good to see this prioritization. Jack, Dermot, I'm going to ask you, is there anything here that surprises you?
No, I mean, maybe the only surprising thing that it's all pretty similarly weighted. Really, I guess maybe that shows you the diversity of the people on this call as well. yeah, nothing immediately strikes. And I guess maybe I'm interested to hear what people think about the difference between technical contributors and builders hackers, because it seems like there's some overlap there, and whether when they picture that or think of that, are they also thinking about devs at established projects? So yeah, it'd be good to know. Or yeah, if that's just because I guess all of those kind of archetype personalities we can convert into technical contributors potentially, and same with node runners.
Yeah.
Or some investors can do some of that as well. So yes, it's interesting to get I guess the purpose of some of that. But yeah, great input.
I was I was expecting to see node runners and gateways be slightly higher than devs at established projects, so that was one surprise for me. I think just because there has been a historic focus on like the wholesale side of things, that has been a big strategy for growing relays. But yeah, seems people are starting to align on wanting to attract more established projects directly as we mature as a project. Technical contributors as well is. I mean, I think we all recognize the need for technical contributors, but I wasn't expecting it to be the highest one here. So that's interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think one of the reasons I feel, or I would personally rank, the devs at established projects and the builders and hackers, is that if we build our brand within that kind of developer community, we are so much more attractive to future gateways because we bring more benefit to them in terms of brand halo. So, if it's a new gateway that doesn't have a reputation, they get more benefit from being underpinned by Pocket. If it's an established gateway, they get more recognition for supporting decentralization. So it's interesting. I think, yeah, there are no wrong choices in this one, which is part of what makes it so interesting too. Oh, I didn't know you could see this. You can see where people have voted. That's quite cool. And it goes with that. Sorry, that should have been really apparent. But anyway, there we go. Cool. Okay, so that has been really helpful. Let me show you just briefly. I mentioned that we're going to roll out a survey. I will be sharing it within the community because I would love to get some people to just test run it for me. We did test run it with various people in Paris. I got people sitting down and talking to me, and had some really useful insight into how they find new technology, how they find projects, how they search for things when they don't know. But I think that getting a survey out will be a nice way of getting some really kind of detailed insight and also kind of a little bit of qualitative insight. I've put one question in there to try to understand what brand awareness we actually have and what brand associations we have. So I will share that with you, and I'll put a little note about how it's going to be used. But what it all kind of feeds into is avatars. So avatars are a way to kind of take that kind of general context and turn it into something that feels like a single person, because there's a singularity bias or specificity bias. We find it easier to conceptualize things when they are specific. So we take all of the insights that we get, all of the conversations that we have, and we try to create an avatar that feels singular, human. Ignore the picture. I was trying to find a better one this morning and ended up doing something else instead. So apologies for the picture. But you can see, and I don't expect you to read all of this text right now, and actually it needs to be refined. But we'll go into quite a lot of depth around who they are, their demographics, their psychographics, what they aim for, what their hopes and ambitions are, aspirations, where they're at in their journey, what they fear, what they worry about, what challenges they're trying to overcome, where they're trying to get to, how they become problem aware, how they become solution aware, where they are consuming content, where they're engaging with media, how they're engaging. And then it comes into this kind of profile, and we will try to create a from to of the journey that we want to take them on from a marketing standpoint. So in this case, not really aware of Pocket or what it stands for, and probably some kind of bias or concern that actually decentralized might feel like the right thing, but right now, is it actually better to, not only are we the pioneer of decentralized infrastructure, but actually that is really important to unlocking reliability, performance, and cost-effective solutions. Again, I'm going to share these somewhere so that people can kind of jump in. I'm thinking of maybe creating an open slides deck. In fact, I might just share these slides so that you can come in and leave comments. As I said at the start, this is going to be a very iterative process because we don't have the time to do a kind of 3-month deep dive. We are kind of building the plane while in flight, classic Web3. But this is just really to give you an idea of what we're trying to get towards. We will ultimately have this for all of our target personas, and we will ultimately have communication plans against each of them. We started with the dev at an established project, just because that was our feeling that that was the best place to start. It's not the only place to start, obviously. So the goal of this is really just to show you what this turns into. The next thing in that middle bucket is around understanding our competition and understanding our key points of difference. Now, before I give you my biases on this front, I would really like to, again, open this up to your Mentimeter. So we'll go on to the next one. I want you to tell me who you think the most significant competitors are for Pocket. Like, who is it that is fighting for share of mind of our audience? Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a fair point. I'm a little surprised not to see Anchor there. She says leading the jury. Lava's interesting. It didn't get mentioned as much last week as I expected it to. The ones I heard mentioned most were obviously Infura. Alchemy has done such a ridiculously good job. And then Anchor were very present and seemed to have a lot of positive awareness, particularly around working with...
I didn't. So I had...
Yeah, please. Hello?
I think that might have been an accidental unmute.
There I was thinking someone wanted to talk to me. Okay, yeah. Infura feels very different from a brand standpoint. Alchemy feels... Actually, let's skip to the next question. Let's do a word cloud about Alchemy. Like, what are they brilliant at? What are they known for? What are they strong at? You know, what are their points of differentiation? What do you think they're doing really well? Weaknesses, if you see any. Yeah, they've really clean docs. Really good user experience. Really good quality of service. Interesting. Yeah. Are there any things that they're not as good at? Or are there any things that you think maybe a negative? I think if I were to look at them, I think all of these points are absolutely spot on. I think what they've done really well is be incredibly developer-centric. I feel like the Alchemy playbook is very much winning developer hearts. I think that they've done some amazing things to do that. Like, I think the tooling, the docs, the interface, the user experience, the integration with boot camps and being that first point of discovery, being the recommended option. I think they win on word of mouth right now. I think that, you know, they've seen developer pains and created tools like I had the faucet that they created, the Goerli ETH faucet, mentioned a couple of times. Like, they just feel very, you know, in a world of Web3 where I think a lot of projects talk very much from the world of the project, I actually feel like they've done a really good job of being very developer centric.
It looks like we're only able to submit answers once. So there may be people who tried to submit negatives after you suggested that, but they had already submitted the positives. I know I did anyway.
Well, please tell us what the negatives are. Let's bash Alchemy for a moment.
So I was my answer to that was, I think that the sort of established image, the sort of polish, the Web2 polish coming from Silicon Valley, etc. On the flip side, may also suggest like Silicon Valley establishment, anti-crypto, anti-decentralization, kind of walled gardens, all those types of sort of ideas, which can be negative and viewed as anti-crypto. So I think, yeah, I think any kind of web, like centralized RPC provider that kind of leans in that direction will potentially have a disadvantage compared to a decentralized open source alternative that really leans into the crypto ethos. So I think that's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if we can persuade the world that we are equally reliable, performant, quality of service, you know, I think that people are ignoring centralization because they don't feel like there is yet a decentralized option that is as good, if not better. I do feel that if I were Alchemy or any centralized provider, the day that service is visible and out there kind of talking to people, actually, you know, that feels like a day I'd be worried about. I also wonder if they're English language centric. I don't know if Coineasy is on the call, but they were talking about, I thought it was Alchemy who turned up to a event in Korea and all the banners are in English. And I see a lot of international companies that are very English centric. I wonder if there's an opportunity to beat them in local markets. I don't know if anybody's got a view on that. No. Anybody got any negatives they want to share about Alchemy?
We have some typing in response to that. We got using standard date formats, DD, month, year. I guess because that differs depending on locale. But yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think the sort of Silicon Valley kind of establishment is more than, like, the downside is more than just like cultural or like this idea of like being overly corporate or anti-crypto, but I think it does actually on like a geographical level as well, like being overly westernized, and I think that's a good opportunity for us to be more localized and inclusive, especially given the background of the project, the founding team, and so on. So yeah.
And I think it also, to me, that kind of inclusion and that openness, links back to our values. But if you look at from a product standpoint, it's something we live out in the ability to add new chains and to be the place that new chains start out. Like that it is this, you know, we are welcoming more people in. Like we're a lot more inclusive, I feel. You know, if I look at our DNA and I look at our product. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. Now, I put Anchor, but if we want to do a show of hands quickly, Jack, I don't know if you can see. If you want to change this to Lava, just do a thumbs up.
I'm looking. I don't know if there's a way for people to do thumbs up in Discord.
Can do it just on this emoji response here. So
Yeah, gotcha. So we got one thumbs up.
that was me.
Where we have one from. Geez, they fade. I can't see them all at once.
We could ask it as it is, and then get people to maybe speak up or give their comments in the sideline. I guess my quick take is Llama obviously has no customers, so I guess it's all.
I would suggest Anchor, yeah, for the same reason.
Okay.
They have a more established brand and user base.
Perfect.
And then we can chat about Lava.
Be aware that I may have messed this up, and you may only have the ability to submit one response. So no pressure, but make it count.
So I think we will be able to submit 3 words. It's just we can only submit once. So yeah, if you want to submit both negatives and positives, keep it to these 3 words.
Yeah. I almost find OG crypto establishment to be like a contradiction in terms. Like establishment to me takes me to like a totally different space. Really curious to whoever put that to talk me through it, help me understand it.
Yeah, again, that one's me. My understanding founder just been in crypto a while. I know it's kind of what's going to get? It's kind of diametrically opposed, those ideas, but it just like every community, I guess, there's always power centers, and yeah, similarly, I think they've just been around building since 2017, like Pocket, but actually in Silicon Valley and getting backing from like the likes of Pantera and then Binance and these kind of types, and they've played a very Web 2 like game, but then have some kind of crypto OG chops to kind of, I guess, act like they are more in line with the lingo, and kind of have been able to kind of put all that into their marketing and brand, even if their product is very much just an alchemy essentially with a token slapped on top.
Yeah. Yeah, fair. I'm going to put out something I think they're doing really well. I think they're doing really well on their marketing and particularly on their business development. So one of the most interesting panels I attended last week was actually an Anchor panel where they had Polygon, ZK and Microsoft on the panel with them, all talking about how amazingly professional, how great their customer service was, how awesome the performance and the reliability was. They have a partnership with Microsoft to bundle a product that is a kind of combined product between Anchor and Polygon that enables Web 2 companies, particularly enterprise companies that visit the Microsoft App Store, to experiment and take their first steps in Web 3 and blockchain. I then spoke to somebody who had worked with them, and that seems to be the focus of their strategy, that they're building Web3 excitement because they're bringing big Web2 players into the space. So from what I understand, I think they're doing a really good job on customer service and on business development. I don't know if that rings true to other people.
There's a related thing I think they've done well that I think Pocket could have done better in the past is marketing around specific chains and the public RPCs that are provided and so on. So yeah, they've like, for example, bscrpc.com and other public RPC websites that they've kind of co-branded with the chains that they have partnered with. I think that feels like a savvy marketing strategy that could easily have been something that we did and could still do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is definitely important, and leveraging off our relationships and our chains, the tooling that we collaborate with, like just making everything we do work really hard for us, and leaning into relationships. Okay. So the next one, I see some people have got in quickly. Now I'm really worried that you're only going to be able to submit one here. So if that is the case and you've put in just one word, please do feel free to drop things into chat. Is around our strengths and how we are different. What are the bits of narrative that you tell people when you're proud of Pocket? What are the things that you're most proud of with this project? Really interesting words. I think it's right that communities come up twice. There's a lot around that aspect of things and the human piece of who we are, the diversity, how open it is, how inclusive, how egalitarian, democratic. I mean, that I just, on a side, I completely resonate with what Dermot said about our governance model and the recognition that had. I have a few DAO friends, and they respond really positively to it. We've potentially got a big media opportunity for Jack to share his perspective on governance. It's something that I think we will be recognised for, and that's really important when you think about the vision and the mission and the legitimacy of that. So that's definitely cool. The protocol, I think, is really interesting. Yeah, and again, to another of Dermot's points, like app chains are like, to sound like Zoolander, are so hot right now. And we have been building one for like 2 years, so like amazing. But it seems as though we've got some really cool stuff that we can start talking about much more broadly around the technical aspect of what we're building. The protocol V1. I think we need to start communicating more about that. I think that's really cool. And the fact that people are contributing to it, that open source access, the permissionless piece, the builders that we have within our community. And the mission, actually, for me, is a really big one. I'm almost surprised not to see that bigger. It was something Mike said the other day, that if you believe that future economies will run on blockchain, do you want that infrastructure owned by Alchemy? Or do you want it owned by a genuinely decentralized RPC network that is governed and owned by its users? I think there's something that we can tell the world about. This is the fruition, the coming of age of one of the big Web3 promises, that we have functioning, decentralized products. That, you know, that this is something I feel like the space has been waiting for, has needed. I also really like how much the community has come up here, because I think, you know, if you say that Alchemy has the you know, WinDev Heart playbook, and Anchor has the, you know, Web2 Enterprise playbook or the BD playbook, like, I feel like our playbook is much more inherently Web3. And part of that for me is that community aspect and how we can bring that to life. So I love to see that that is one of the biggest words, actually the biggest word. Okay, thank you everyone for contributing there. Where we go from here, just to help you understand the next steps on the journey. I couldn't find a way to do this effectively on this call, and my thoughts are still a little bit ill-formed, so I don't really want to ad-lib it. But the next thing we will really be thinking about is brand expression, and the way that we get to that. So, you know, this is that kind of point around people engage with people, not companies. The more we can make our brand feel human, the more we'll get engagement with it. There is a framework that is called archetypes. So it comes from Carl Jung. It's based on this idea that there are 12 archetypes, each of whom have particular characteristic traits and genres. And if you think about different brands, you can probably map them to one or two of these archetypes. And the exercise that you do in terms of defining your brand archetype is it starts with the audience. So you start with your bullseye target, so the most important audience persona for you. You think about what archetype is aspirational to them, like what do they aspire to be, and how do they see themselves today against each of these. And then you think about who they are most likely to want to engage with. So, if they are, the explorer, explorer hero or explorer everyman, or normally it's a combination of archetypes because we become more interesting the more multifaceted we are. We don't want to oversimplify because that reduces engagement. But then you think about, okay, well, who are they most likely to get on with? Like, how should we be showing up? If that's who they are, who do we need to be? And what aspects of our brand and our personality do we need to dial up? Who are we naturally? So thinking about how do we naturally show up? What's tied to our differentiation? But also how do we show up in a way that is most likely to create a strong relationship with our audience? So that is the kind of exercise that happens next. That feeds into personality. So we come into that kind of personality point. It feeds into the brand voice. And then we've kind of revisit some of those points that we had around differentiation and distinctiveness and strengths. And we think about how to communicate them in key messaging that aligns with that brand expression. And yeah, as I say, that's what happens next. So, there was one other thing I did want to say. Join in. I will keep posting updates on the forum because I think it's really important to be transparent. I didn't post one last week. I won't necessarily post one each and every week, but I'll post it as often as I can, just so you know where I'm at and what I'm thinking, and therefore can jump in. And the goal really is so that you can jump in. So please do. I'm also setting up a little Telegram group because I feel like that is an interesting place to spar and bounce ideas. It is called Open Unstoppable Brands. You can see what I did there. It is a space for anybody that is interested in brand, in marketing. Maybe you're working on that in your own project within the ecosystem. Maybe you're just curious about it. If you are, please jump in. I will probably use that group as a place to brainstorm, bounce ideas, share ideas that I think could be interesting in order to bounce them and get feedback, get thoughts, see if they grow into something else. Maybe it spins out into a socket. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it dies. Maybe you want to use it as an opportunity to test some of your ideas for your own projects. And so it's a space for anybody that is curious and interested about brand and marketing, particularly within the Pocket world. There will strictly be no other chat. I will channel my inner school teacher, and I come from a family of school teachers, to just prevent anything that is not on that mission, because I don't want anybody to leave the group because the reason they came is not being lived up to. So it will be a pure space for brand and marketing chat. If that interests you, then I will drop this link also into the Discord chat and would love you to join. Yes, Gabby, absolutely. There you go. So there we go. That brings me to an end of what I wanted to go through with you. I think I've run over. Sorry.
That was awesome, Eds. Thank you very much. I'd like to open a space to see if anyone has any thoughts or feelings they want to share now that the workshop has finished. Any insights, any ideas. Anything is valuable, so don't be afraid to share it. We had a comment here from Harry in the chat saying that we need the quote from Mike that you had mentioned published around do we want Alchemy governing it or Pocket?
That quote may or may not already be making its way into a draft Twitter thread I'm working on.
I think one comment I have that just occurred to me towards the end of the workshop there is, and I don't know if there's anything to this, but it's interesting that we have identified gateways, and we kind of have one of our target personas is like businesses, companies, enterprises, like Infura, Alchemy, etc. We want them to become gateways. But what's interesting is the strengths that we identified that we have are all more individual centric. So community, inclusion, people.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, so I wonder if there's like a contradiction there.
Böyle değil mi? Aslında bak konuşurken aklına gelmez belki.
There's also some stuff around the technology and the protocol.
It was very interesting falan diye.
So for me, I guess
Gelmez yani.
things.
Ya da işte soracak ilginç olan neydi diye.
Yavaş yavaş konuşalım.
Ya şu an keyifli ne güzel tam bölge bu.
Sorry, can you
Sorry.
mute?
Yep, I'm muted there. Sorry, what were you saying, Ads?
I was saying that there were a couple of points there around the technology and the protocol, which I think will be, a lot of the attraction and also the builders and the developer community is an attraction to gateways that want to build on top of us, kind of being able to access that. So I think there were some points there that were relevant, but I do, I take your point. It was much more community oriented. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop anybody else from responding.
Yeah, no, I think that was maybe another accidental unmute. Yeah, Zatar, good question. So just to, I guess, to make sure I understand the question correctly, do you mean are there efforts to do like PR and thought leadership around governance specifically?
Yes, and to get our brand out there by taking part in conferences and where they have where the focus is on DAO and since we have.
That's a good question. So funnily enough, we do actually have opportunities in the pipeline, specifically relating to DAOs and governance. I'm going to be working on a thought leadership piece about governance for a publication that our PR firm kind of gave us the opportunity just this week. So I'm not sure exactly of the timing of when that would come out, but we've been speaking back and forth with our PR firm, and it's become really clear that our governance model is a hot topic essentially. We've been an early adopter and a pioneer of a new approach to governance that is becoming very popular, and there's a lot of themes in the DAO space that we address. So there's an opportunity there for us to put our name out there as pioneers and get people interested. So we're absolutely going to be taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on this too long, but it is a good question. I think it's another good example of Pocket doing lots of great, innovative, actually world-class and genuinely leading things that not that many people know about. Saying that, I guess all of us in the leadership team are actually contributors to some of the bigger known, more influential DAOs across the space and are contributors and are connected to them. So I think the people who are leaders in these DAOs and these kind of communities aware of what we're doing, and it is trickling through and are excited, but actually because we haven't had the marketing function in place, that hasn't translated into a broader world. But actually, we also didn't have everything in the right place to be able to share it. Masari was great. I think that was really helpful to kind of talk about, give practical examples of how Pocket's DAO compared to other DAOs. But I think with this new governance design for creds, it's a great opportunity to share again with our immediate network and use that then to leverage into a much bigger splash really across the space in terms of how Pocket is leading in this regard.
Just to answer your question there in the chat, that comment was in regards to Alchemy, with regarding uptime and customer experience.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat during the presentation. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, feelings, questions? We have some typing. Update the logo already. Got some more typing. I guess so. Just to jump on that, Ads, do you want to maybe share some of your thinking around this whole brand strategy process and how that might feed into specific branding updates and whatnot? Like where
100%.
How will that be approached sequentially and whatnot?
Yeah, so the goal is, a visual identity should come from the brand. It shouldn't precede the brand. It shouldn't precede the definition of that kind of last bit of how the brand wants to express itself, what personality and values we want to hold. And I do understand that X updated a multi-billion-dollar brand overnight. I don't know how much strategy came before that. I certainly haven't.
Truly world-class brand strategy there.
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, Ethan, my TLDR, I don't think the visual identity is holding us back right now. I think we've got bigger things that we need to figure out today. I haven't seen the Pocket logo that Rick came up with. Very keen to see it. I have on my list, like it is on my roadmap, to review our visual identity. Personally, I believe the right order to do that on is once we have, we've defined our brand expression, because I don't want to keep having to do it because it's a distraction from actually getting out there and building our brand with our end users. I want to go back to Zatar's point around our competitors' docs superiority. Yes, there absolutely is an initiative underway to improve that. I've spoken before that right now my initial goals are around growing top of mind awareness and consideration, particularly amongst end user devs as of today. And there's no point driving them into our world if they just leave as soon as they see our documentation and our user experience. I know it's something P&I are looking at also. We're looking at ways to do it again, like if we can find a way to do it in a way that lives our values a bit more. So we've been chatting with Developer DAO about maybe doing some kind of a content-focused hackathon with their developer community. That might be a way that we can get a lot of content and a lot of engagement, involvement, draw new people into our ecosystem, and also step change things more rapidly. We have also got a couple of technical writers that we can talk to. So yes, it's definitely on our radar. It hasn't kicked off yet.
I'd like to jump in here. Actually, we actually have the new tool that Olshansky built, which is a thing to sort of interact with the V1 docs in a way that you would talk to like ChatGPT. I'm not sure how good it is for V0, but I've posted a link in the chat here. It's pretty good for answering questions and giving good overviews of most of the areas of V1, and it's been trained on, well, it's been fed all of the documents in the V1 repository, so it should have like a good knowledge there.
Yeah, thank
So that
you
would
so
be
much.
good to like share and stuff, I guess.
100%. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think ChatGPT based tools are definitely going to become a big part of scaling information curation and support for communities. So yeah, I think we'll absolutely adopt those as we already are doing with Olshansky's experiment. But yeah, there's tools that I'm aware of, like there's community support tools that leverage AI, and they basically listen to they listen to Discord servers, for example, to see what the typical answers usually are for a given question, and then help to scale that support function. So yeah, I imagine we're going to leverage a lot more of those types of tools as they develop and mature.
And H5 law, Harry, I'm afraid you've just landed yourself on my radar as we start to figure that stuff out too. So sorry, not sorry. There was another question from Ms. Kitty42 on any word when we'll see results or lessons from the Node Runner survey.
Yeah, so I can comment on that. We have gathered around 5 or 6 responses to the survey. So I'm going to be doing a chase with node runners who have not responded to the survey yet, because it would be great to get some more. I'm not expecting to get hundreds of responses. I mean, we do have a smaller, I think there's a power law where the majority of our nodes are I think if we got like say 20 responses or even 12 plus, we would have a good representation of our node runner experience for the most part. So yeah, I will be doing a push to try to get more responses to expand our sample size there. So if you haven't responded and you are a node runner, expect me in your DMs soon. And I'll be chasing more next week as well. But once we've done that chaser, Miss Kitty, and we think we've kind of got as many responses as we're going to be able to, then we'll process the data and share it.
Was another question there, Jack, I don't know if you've seen it, around the ETA of V1 testnet.
Yeah, so Harry has answered that in the chat there, aiming for end of Q3.
Amazing.
Okay. Well, I think we can wrap up. If anyone has any more comments or thoughts or questions around marketing, brand strategy, and so on, I'd said earlier in the call, but I just want to reiterate it in case anyone missed it. Her DMs are open. If you have any feedback on the things that were discussed today, or any thoughts on how we can do a better job of brand and marketing strategy, please reach out. Please join this Telegram chat that was linked. Yeah, Ethan, for sure, if you have any more feedback on visual identity and whatnot, do share. But yeah, the Telegram group I just linked in the comments will be a space to collaborate on this stuff. So yeah, super excited to see where we go with this.